The United States had a massive judgment on the commissions paid to real estate brokers. I haven't heard of anything even similar to this type of judgment taking place in the States. So it's pretty incredible. Essentially, there's been a settlement where realtor commissions in the United States have changed drastically. So before, the norm was, let's say you would pay a broker 5 or 6%. So let's just say 5% to make things simple. The norm was that as a seller, you would hire a selling broker, and that broker would list your home and you would pay him 5%. But within that agreement, that broker was incentivized to work with other brokers that maybe have buyers for the property by splitting the commission with any collaborating broker. Now what happened is that the seller is no longer responsible for paying the additional fee to a buyer's broker. So what that looks like is this, okay? Let's say you have $1 million purchase price or sale price of your home, and we're just talking about net after paying your brokerage commissions. Simple. Before, you would pay 5% commission, which is 50 grand, so you would net 950 grand. Now, you sell for that same million, you only pay 2.5%, so you net 975. Right? 25K difference. Simple math for $1 million sale price. And so on the surface, it looks like a seller is netting more, but that's not how real estate necessarily works. It's not that simple. Obviously, I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not sure how it will exactly play out in the end. I will just say you have to break down how each party is affected within real estate, and you have to take into account financing and purchasing power of the buyer and all these things in order to determine really how this will play out. Okay, so the first thing I'll say is that let's say I'm a buyer now and I don't need a broker. Okay, then this might play out the way they're saying, right? I don't need a broker, so I don't get any additional cost associated with hiring a broker because I'm a purchaser that doesn't even need a broker. The seller has his selling agent, pays him 2.5%. I buy it for $1 million. He nets the 975. Great, everybody's happy. He nets a bit more. No problem. The issue comes when, as a buyer now, I need to go and hire a buyer's broker. If that's the case, okay, a couple of things happen here. One, I have to pay that 2.5% out of pocket, whereas before the bank would finance that fee within the purchase price, right? So what people don't understand is that it doesn't matter who pays the buyer's broker and who pays the seller's broker. If there is a buyer and a seller's broker present within a transaction, okay, then the fee comes out somewhere. If you don't want to include it in the purchase price, I have to include it in my calculations when I'm acquiring the property. So that's the first thing, is that it doesn't change the fact that I'm going to incur that fee somewhere. The second thing is I could no longer, as a purchaser, finance it within my purchase price. So now I could afford a lower value property. So my purchasing power has been decreased, right? The second thing is that it's more expensive for me now to actually go through with the transaction because now I have to put down my deposit and I have to come up with the cash to pay the buyer's broker. Now, if you're telling me it could still get financed within the deal, my opinion on the whole thing changes drastically. If the buyer could still finance the fee that he had to pay the buyer's broker, which I think should be the case for this rule to actually make more sense, then I think that a lot of my issues with it will kind of be less important. I still think though, if that's the case, then again, the only times it will actually help people is if the buyer doesn't need a buyer's broker, okay? And even if you're super sophisticated, you probably do want a buyer's broker to help you because they could go and scour the market and find deals for you, and they could submit offers for you quickly. They could draft the offers for you quickly. And then people agree with that, and their argument is that maybe it'll have more of like an a la carte service. So, I'll pay you per offer you submit for me, as opposed to a flat percentage of the purchase price at closing. So we'll see. I think that as long as you could still finance the fee you have to pay a buyer's broker, as if it was within your purchase price and you're really not affected at all in the bank's eyes, as a purchaser, I think if that's the case, this could end up playing out favorably. But I think if you cannot finance it and you need a buyer's broker, okay, you're going to qualify for a lower mortgage and you're going to have put more money out of pocket to make the acquisition. How is that going to net more money for the seller? Now, the last thing, I think it would be unfair if I didn't mention this. The argument as well in favor of the judgment is that right now there's not a lot of homes being listed. But now if you reduce the fee a seller needs to pay to list his home, then you'll have more listings. And if you have more listings, there's more supply on the market. And if there's more supply on the market and demand stays the same, then they should be competing for properties at lower values because there's more properties to choose from. We'll see if that plays out. At the end of the day, we'll see. I don't know how excited a seller would be to go and list this property for 2.5% less.
Exactly. So that's, you know what I mean? Like, listen, this I think is a solution that they're trying to push to get people to list their homes on the marketplace, right? That being said, that doesn't also solve the problem. This is something we're talking about off pod, where right now, let's say perfect world, everything's good, prices are lower. I sell my house, and obviously if you sell your house, you're going to go buy a new house, probably a bigger one, right? You're not going to sell a house to go smaller. Some people may, or you're generally speaking going to get something of an upgrade, right? If you're selling potentially. Now, all of the costs that come, let's say with people buying an upgraded home, everything else on the house, the cost-wise is through the roof. So why would I want to save, let's say, okay, I'm going to save this percentage and maybe make a little bit more. Let's just say on the $1 million home, I make $25K more, right? Instead of $50K, it's $25K. That $25K, I already know I'm gonna have to blow it for everything else. And I just don't think that this approach is a good incentive to get people to want to sell their homes.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but with the prices of everything, today, people can't even barely afford. Easter's coming up, and the prices of chocolate are like up 10,000% from like forever. It's disgusting. So why would I want to sell just for $25,000 on $1 million home, by the way? Whereas right now, I have a locked-in mortgage. I'm good. I'm comfortable, and I love the place that I'm living in. That's kind of what we're seeing, in my opinion. It sounds good, and I guess for some people in the perfect world, but I don't think it's going to be that big pushing factor that tomorrow, like when this happens, everyone's house is for sale and everyone's going. I just don't believe that. I think it's initiative to maybe get people that are looking to sell, but I think if someone's willing to sell, they're willing to sell. Same thing that I know a lot of people where, you know, they live in a house that their house is probably worth about, when they bought the house, is about $500,000. Now their house is worth, let's say, $1.2 million in the area. So I asked him, I said, why don't you sell? He's like, and go where? He's like, I'm gonna I'll make that $1.2 million, even if he keeps the percentage. You know, I don't know, like the instead of the 5% that he has to pay, the 2.5%. And he's like, I'm gonna have to find some place where, you know, the prices across the globe went up, where it's gonna be probably smaller. I'll still probably have to dish out $1 million, and then I have to refurnish, I have to redo this, I have to redo that. So it's a headache, you know what I mean? So I don't think that them doing that is the best incentive for people to sell their house. I think they're just trying to do this so, you know, it seems really good in the eyes of people, and like, wow, okay, the government is doing something, or, you know, they're coming to an agreement, and look, you see, we're trying to help you, we're doing this, we're putting the $10,000 in place, credit, all of these things as an initiative, but it's not gonna really solve the problem.
Yeah. And I'll tell you also another thing, a last point I'll make here on why I think this could potentially backfire and be worse for everyone involved in a transaction. Okay, so I acquired an industrial building. I acquired it with a partner of mine, and we're both licensed. We could both list the property for lease, okay? So he ended up listing it for lease, and he knew he didn't want to collect a fee, like commission, to lease it. He didn't care. He didn't want to collect money to lease it at all. So what he came up with is, why don't we pay a full 5% commission? But what we'll do is we'll tell them that we're giving the whole 5% to the collaborating broker that brings us a tenant to lease our property. And we thought, holy shit, this is genius, right? Because now if you're looking where to do visits for your tenant that wants an industrial space, everybody you see is offering 1%, 2%, 0%, 0.5%. Now you see our property, we're offering 5% commission, right? We leased that property within 2 weeks, okay? At like top market rent at the time, okay? And that's the point I think that people might be overlooking in this scenario, is that when you're paying only the selling broker to sell your home, you might not be saving any money. You might be losing money because now there's less incentive for a broker that's working with a buyer to show your home. If a buyer's broker knows he's not going to get paid by the buyer, he's only going to look at listings to show the buyer that have an agreement to give him a commission if he brings the buyer. If there's no commission for him to bring a buyer and the buyer won't pay him, he's not showing your house.
Yeah.
So you have to hope that that buyer goes alone and looks at your home and goes and requests a visit for it. So I think that there's a lot of different things that you need to consider, and a lot of things need to happen perfectly for this to actually work out in sellers' favors. And I just don't see how it will end up playing out that way whatsoever. I don't think it'll ever happen in Canada. And the reason is that, at least in Quebec, there's been this huge push that the organization here, the real estate brokerage organization, does not want you to be in a conflict of interest. What that means is they don't even want you to represent both the buyer and a seller in a transaction, because they say that it's impossible to have both parties' best interests in mind when one party wants the highest price and the other party wants to buy for the lowest price, right? So they say it's a complete conflict of interest, and they do not allow you to represent both parties. But now in the States with this judgment, it's almost incentivizing a seller's agent to not collaborate, so they have to represent both parties, right? Because it's incentivizing one party to not be represented, the buyer, and it's incentivizing the other party to not collaborate. So there's one broker representing both sides, and both people have alternate goals within the transaction. So you're creating this conflict of interest. Again, I don't really care about the conflict of interest aspect of it. If you're sophisticated enough, it's fine. I'm just saying, for the general public, it's probably not the best outcome for them whatsoever.
Yeah.